Hi folks, this is David Easterbrook here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be working on a Trident maple bonsai. I'll be doing summer pruning. It's a very vigorous, strong growing tree, and so it has to be pruned quite often in summer. If not, the branches get very long and the inside foliage dies off. So today we'll be cutting it back in order to let the light in for the tree to breathe, and that way we can maintain the smaller, thinner branches inside our forest. This is actually a raft style tree. It's created from one single branch that was air layered off a very large tree, and you can see the part of the branch running along the ground and all these smaller branches that have been raised up to become new trunks. Now this was done over 30 years ago, so it goes to show you that it does take time. It took maybe about 4 years before the trunk that was laid on the ground started to root, and now it's all one single tree. You know, in Japanese it's called ikarabuki, or raft style. And I forgot to mention that this tree is what we call a large-leafed Trident maple. There's actually 3 varieties of Trident maples: large-leafed, medium-leafed, and also small-leafed Trident maples. A lot of people don't like using the ones with larger leaves because they find them too large. I don't mind at all. All I do is create a larger bonsai so that the leaves will be in proportion. So let's get started on this pruning gig. And as I say, it has to be done several times during the summer because it's such a strong, vigorous grower, this tree. Okay, we always start at the top. And what we do where there's a new growth here is at the base of it, where the first internode is, I take the 2 big leaves, these 2 leaves, hold them upwards and cut across. So everywhere there's a new growth here, I cut back to the first internode. And okay, here I'm going to hold this one and cut back to here. If the leaves are too large, I'm just going to cut them off anyway, because as I said, I just have to get more light into the inside of this tree. So it's very important to do that. Here we have, again, a new growth that's sticking out. So I go right back inside, if you can see here, to the first bud and cut back there, cut off the 2 large leaves at the base at the same time. Now there will be a new bud that will pop out from there. Here, the same thing. We don't care about the rest of the new growth. We just cut at the first internode. Here again, we grab the branch, the new growth, we hold up the 2 leaves and we cut across. All right, so we keep doing this. Now there are exceptions, of course. If there's a very weak branch, then we would leave it. I mean, there's no hard and fast rules in bonsai. But again, the point of today's work is to let air and light circulate on the inside of this tree. And because otherwise, very weak lower branches like this would eventually die. So we have to let the light in so that we can keep these lower branches healthy. And we're working our way downwards. If there is a very large leaf, I just cut it off. It'll take about the petioles that the rest of the leaf stem will actually drop off after 3 or 4 days, and the new leaf will appear in about 20 days. But it's such a strong tree. This one grows right into the end of the fall season. In fact, you really have to watch out with Trident maples that you bring them in before the first hard frost, because the sap rises throughout the fall, and if it freezes, the whole trunk will split open. when the sap freezes. So you really have to watch out. I bring them in early. Even in Japan, Trident maples are protected during the winter. They're put in cold frames, unless you're in a very warm region of Japan. But yeah, it's very touchy. You do want to protect them from hard frosts and from intense cold. See the size of this leaf. We're just going to cut it off. Here again, we're going down to the base, holding this here, holding this one here, cutting them off. Coming right down to the bottom here, holding these first two leaves, cutting off there. Now these leaves are too large, so and we just keep working our way downwards. And afterwards, it's not a complete defoliation. I don't like doing complete defoliations of maples, any type of maples, because generally not all branches are created equal. There's some very strong branches, some very weak. So I tend to not defoliate the weaker branches. And I don't remove the smaller inside leaves on these tridents. I leave them there so that they'll keep on photosynthesizing and keep the inside of my tree healthy. So we keep on going down. It doesn't take too long, and the results are quite nice. Now this tree isn't destined for any show at all. So, you know, you don't have to worry about over pruning or anything like that. This tree is just going back on the growing benches for the rest of the summer. And we want to just keep it happy and healthy, that's all. This tree has already been shown in many shows. And it's a very inspiring tree because, of course, the Raft style is quite an unusual style when a trunk is laid on the ground. This, as I say, was actually a branch that I air layered from the tree and laid the branch on the ground. So, now we have to be careful with these inside branches because we want these to strengthen up. So I'm not going to cut off, this leaf is too big, but I'm not going to cut the rest of this off because this is a weak branch. What I will do is I'll wire them down and just let that keep on growing long and to strengthen up the inside branches. Some of them are strong, some of them are weak. That's normal, typical of all bonsai. And you have to respect that. All maples have opposite growth. The buds grow opposite to each other. So I try to aim always for two leaves that are horizontal rather than vertical so that I don't have to wire the new bud downwards. If you prune back to vertical buds, it's no problem, but then in the future you're going to have to wire either the upper one down or the lower one up. And I try to avoid as much wiring as possible. I think when you create a bonsai through pruning, that actually it looks much more natural. Mind you, I don't think you can, you have to wire the trunk into a basic shape. But when the tree is at this stage, you can complete a bonsai merely by just pruning it. So we're working our way down. We've done most of the main trunk here, and now what I am doing is I'm working my way down to the smaller the secondary trunks down below. You have to keep in mind the overall silhouette of this forest. If we turn it around, we'll see it's always a sort of a triangle. You can see the triangular shape here. This is the larger side of a scalene triangle. And you want to maintain that shape. So you always have to keep that in mind as you're pruning. Okay. Now this here is a front branch, and it's very, very low. Generally, you don't have such low front branches. And so I keep it because I think bonsai should be tri-dimensional. I don't like to have a bare trunk, but you have to keep it very short and not let it block the view, especially to the smaller trees behind. So yeah, I make sure to prune it more than the others so that we keep it very compact. There we go. Okay, so we keep on going here. Okay, we're still working on the main tree. Almost finished it. You have to always start with the highest trunk, the apex, and of the main trunk, and then when you finish that, then you can go to the inferior trunks, the smaller ones, the secondary ones, and they have to harmonize with our main trunk here. So it's very important to make sure that you maintain that harmony in movement and also proportions, curves. It's so important that you harmonize all the trunks in a group bonsai. We're working our way downwards at a fast pace. This is a relatively, it goes quickly. Pruning is always quite a satisfying job. It's not long and tedious like wiring. You can, get results very quickly, so that's gratifying. Now this branch, again, we have to remove some of the, we want each branch to be like a little floating cloud in a way, but we don't want them to be too thick. Neither flat nor too thick or too thin. And I think that's the way with everything in bonsai. It's the key word is moderation, You always have to think about moderation in everything you do, in your pruning, in your wiring, in your fertilizing. Don't go overboard. Let the tree grow slowly at its own pace. Too many people are trying to get quick results, and I've seen so many bonsai that have been ruined because they just are too quick to put a bonsai into from a training pot or plastic nursery pot into a bonsai pot when the design of the tree is not even finished. So how could you possibly know what shape of pot or what size of pot to put it in? Okay, you have to really take your time, do things slowly, prune trees when they need to be pruned, prune them the way they need to be pruned. It's all part and parcel of being a a good bonsai artist. We don't do bonsai for fame and notoriety. We do bonsai because we love the trees. We want to keep our trees alive. And I think the most important thing is just to, as I say, to work them slowly, see them evolve slowly over many years, and you'll have good results. You have to learn horticulture a bit too, because I think many people don't understand the basics of horticulture, and their trees are often in poor health. So you have to learn the basics of soil pH, fertilization, what type, when, how to fertilize. That's really important for the health of your trees. So keep all of that in mind when you're doing bonsai. Bonsai isn't all fun and games. No, it's serious, guys. It's serious. Here we're going toward the very bottom of our triangle. We don't want to cut them too short because you can see that the movement from the top downwards. We always have to keep that in mind. But if we leave the branches too long, they'll they'll thicken up too much, and we definitely do not want thick branches. Old bonsai should have very thin, delicate branches so that you see the contrast between a thick, powerful trunk rising upwards and thin, delicate branching. That is so important. Yeah, that's a nice, pretty little delicate tree here in the bottom. I really enjoy that little tree there. I think that one's a real stunner. And that's the way it should be. The main trunk should be larger, and as they fan outwards, they shouldn't be in line. They should each be slanting outwards to get the maximum amount of sunlight, because that's what they would do in nature. And as we get further and further away from the ancestor tree, the main tree in nature, these would be more recent. They would be younger trees, so they would have the shortest, smallest trunks. We're opening up spaces for that light and air that is so essential so that the trees, as I say, can breathe. It's very important. Get light into those lower branches, as I've said several times. If you don't, you just lose them. They'll atrophy, they'll die. So we're just making sure that each one is not shaded out by the upper ones. See here, this one is shading the apex of this tree is shading this lower branch. So we have to reduce the size of this apex. Not only is it shading out this branch on its own trunk, but this lower branch on another trunk. So again, we're going to grab the leaves and start shortening the new growth. And we're nearing the end. It looks like it's almost been done, you know, robotically, just cutting them willy-nilly. But every single one of them I'm looking. Do I want an upper bud or two horizontals? So I'm cutting here where I'll have the branches growing out horizontally. That's important all the time. You have to think of things like that. You don't cut any which way. Okay, so we've got the main, all of the main branches, we've got them all pruned. Now we'll turn around and we'll look at what we've done and see if we've opened enough spaces up here. So you have to go over once or twice, much like a barber would you know, do touch-ups before you get off the chair. Same thing here. Little branch in here is blocking some light, so we'll remove it. This big one here is out of line. This one also. So just making sure that if there's little sort of almost suckers sometimes growing along the trunk, or some branches, or they're growing inwards, we remove them. Now we can actually see into the tree and decide what we have to keep and what we have to remove. So it's another great advantage to pruning. The tip of this branch has become too strong, so we'll actually cut the whole tip off and take a new little branch to be the tip. Keep them small and keep them delicate. Okay. I've had some trouble this summer with some Japanese beetles. Every time my maples send out new buds, they gather on them and they eat them. So I'm going to have to protect this tree, because once it's I've worked on it, you don't want it to be defoliated a second time by Japanese beetles. So we have to make sure that either cover it with some mesh or cheesecloth, or even, I would say, you know, spray it regularly with an insecticide so that it won't be eaten alive by these Japanese beetles, because they're voracious. Here we're opening up a space here also. So this tree, we can see the shape, the form of this beautiful trunk here. Now these trees are really going to they will appreciate getting all the extra light. They will just take off, and the inner growth will send out new back budding. So it's really advantageous for the tree. It looks drastic or radical. Actually, it's not at all. It's what I do. On this tree, I actually do it 2 or 3 times this summer. It's such a vigorous grower. We've got a little tree in here that gives a lot of depth to the other trees. It makes them stand out because they are such a they're so much larger. but we don't want it overtaking the other trees. So we have to keep it very, very, very tiny. It's there for its looks. It's not there for lending a sense of proportion to our forest. So it's not there as an important trunk. It's there to give depth and proportion to our forest, our group planting. So I'll sweep off the leaves. We'll take a good look at it now that it's done, and I think you'll be able to appreciate the pruning work that has been done on this forest here. Trident maple is a very, very wonderful tree to work on because they are so strong. They're strong growers. They grow quickly. The trunks fatten up quickly. They don't have that many enemies. They're not too many insect pests. Not really bothered by many fungal diseases. So they certainly are a pleasure to work on. I advise everyone to try to acquire a Trident maple bonsai. Add one to your collection if you don't have one. They are not hardy in zone 5, which is where I live, 5B. But that said, I mean, we protect many of our trees in winter. So just bring it into a garage, a slightly heated garage or cold frame, or even a garden shed that's that you keep at a temperature slightly below freezing, and your tree should do very well in the winter. Oops, we've got 2 leaves there that I didn't cut off that are way too large. Okay. I should have covered this tree with, usually I cover them with the rags, and that way I avoid all the work of sweeping it off. But I was in a rush today, and so I didn't do it. So it's taken me a bit longer than necessary to clean it up, but it's done. I'll raise it up a bit so that permits you to see it. I think you're going to enjoy the results. And as I say, they make nice bonsai. So here we go. We're raising it up so that you can especially enjoy this style of bonsai, this raft style. Now you can see the trunk laying on the ground. It's already sent out roots, and I'm sure that if you don't have one, that you can always try this style, add one to your collection. So thanks a lot, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little today's project, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube because there's many more to come. Thanks, guys.